Hello.
Welcome to OurTime.
Thank you very much. You always say that, and I'm always here.
I know.
And it's great that you're here because I've been waiting all week for this particular episode.
You have, I know.
Because we've got entertainer extraordinaire Vaani coming up in the second part, but in the first part...
We have a guest that has actually been on the program before, so he's becoming a bit of a regular.
The thing is, we just had so many more questions and you left so many messages, so we thought we would invite Rodney Fox back again. Hello, Rodney.
Rodney.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Great to be here. It's a pretty happy show, isn't it?
We actually have a great time, a good time on our time.
Yes.
Rodney, I'd like to show everybody this photograph in your book because this photograph tells your life story in a nutshell, in a way, because on this side we have a picture of you and your lovely wife who's here with you tonight.
Lovely Kay.
Hope it's the same one.
Yes, first wife.
First wife and only wife.
No, but that's what my husband always introduces me as. His Janice, my first wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the other side we can see the horrible things that happened to you when you actually were bitten by a shark, because...
Age 23.
If people don't know your name, immediately they will recognise that. And this is your book, isn't it?
That's right.
What's it about?
It's about all of the adventures that shark instigated with me. It's amazing how it changed my whole life, and it took me around the world and to making films. We've made over 100 films and documentaries over the years now, and I've met so many interesting and wonderful people.
I thought you were going to say so many interesting sharks.
No, but I was going to ask you, Rodney, when you actually were bitten by the shark, what were you doing then? Were you diving? Were you...
I was spear fishing. In those early days, in 1963, a lot of groups got together and went in and speared fish, and in groups and clubs, and we had lovely club outings everywhere. I was pretty good at it, and I went in the South Australian Championships, and the year before I won it, I was the top diver in this state. And a year later at Aldinga, I went in again. There were 40 divers in the water, and we fished for 3 or 4 hours. And you can imagine all of the fish that were speared bled. Yeah. We knew nothing about sharks out there in those days, really very little, except they were out there. The devil, death, sharks, hell.
Yeah.
I mean, they were in that category. And I was underwater and this great big shark grabbed me, and it's a long story and I'm sure everybody's heard it many times, but I struggled to get it off, grabbed it in a bear hug and held onto it, got up to the surface again. It dragged me down because it was grabbed a hold of a fish float. I managed miraculously to get to the surface. A boat picked me up, took me to hospital. The doctors were unbelievable. I can never thank them enough. They didn't know what they were getting, and here I am with all my limbs. They stitched me up. I had 500 or 600 stitches, and I'm here today. And I wondered so often. I thought I'd been left on Earth to do something really special. And
but it seems you have.
Well, you have.
Well, all I've done is talked about sharks and tried to get people to understand that we need the sharks in our ocean. They're not as bad as everybody thinks they are. It's all in our own minds that this fear of sharks.
You said something interesting before. You said there's something I've always remembered, that if as human beings we took from every animal because we need protein, then we would be eating koalas and snakes and lizards and everything else. But what we're doing is we're overfishing our waters. Therefore, the sharks don't have enough food to eat.
We're protecting the dolphins and the sea lions, and they're getting larger and larger in numbers.
And they're a food source.
They're a food source. But in Australia, we probably do have our share of sharks, but worldwide, there's far less. They reckon in some places there's 20% of the sharks are left. And it's because of the shark fin soup industry. The Asians love their shark fin soup. It's a tradition for them. If they don't serve it, they're not doing you a service when you go and have dinner with them. And so it has to be slowly being changed, and people are starting to understand that the oceans really need the sharks.
Because they clean up as well, don't they?
Yeah.
How do we keep ourselves, like, how do we protect ourselves from them if we're out in the water, I mean,
Swim in a pool.
Surfing. I mean, so many people surf these days, and of course we've seen some incidents recently.
And I can see the fear in your eyes when you say that. How can I protect myself? Well, that's another world down there. We're learning to go into that world. We have to learn to live with them. Nobody's spending very much money at all on shark repellents. They talk about it a bit. And years ago, I went to our government. I said I'd like to help with some research, and with our boats, we take out expeditions to dive with these sharks in cages. And we're showing a lot of people. We've made 80 different films and documentaries, and hundreds of magazine articles. And basically got the answer is, we can't put any money in. They're not killing enough people.
When did you dive last?
And
What a joke.
I dived about 10 days ago. I was diving in a cage with a great white shark. I took a young lady who had been badly attacked by a shark off Sydney coast there. She had a really bad bite on her head and her shoulder. And she hadn't been back to see, she'd been back in the water, but she hadn't seen a great white shark. And we were filming for an American television series that is being made on South Australia, on some of the offshore islands, and the beautiful fish life as well. But without the great white sharks there, they wouldn't even be doing it here, because that's the key of it.
That's the hook.
And I took her in the water and showed her some of these great white sharks swimming past out at the Neptune Islands. And the reason why they hang around the Neptune Islands is because it's the largest sea lion colony along the southern coast of Australia.
It's off of Port Lincoln, isn't it?
It's the best restaurant for them, and they call in there for a few weeks every year, top up, before they do big long journeys, 2,000 or 3,000 kilometres, and they come back to the same place again, to their restaurant.
So, but you know, you look at the sleekness of a shark, and we know from our understanding they've been here basically since the dinosaurs. Are they a smart creature?
In their way, they must be very, very smart, because they've lived so long. As you said,
They don't have a big brain though, do they?
They have little brains, basically. They go on their instincts. They don't learn like we do and organise things around it. They totally go on their instincts. They can find their way back to the same islands. We're seeing the same sharks. Almost, there's the summer sharks and the winter sharks and different clans that come back regularly to those islands. They don't seem to learn very much at all, but they don't have to. They just know. They don't have to eat regularly.
They're not 3 meals a day.
No, they don't. They don't need fast restaurants on every corner.
Just take a leg or two on the way through.
They can, well, yeah, and they don't like us. That's probably why. No,
So
we're too
they
bony.
Bite and then spit you out.
Yes, they often do. But you
That's an
imagine,
interesting thing you just said. They don't like us, we're too bony. So why do you think the attacks that do occur? Is it we're just in the way? Is it the clothing we're wearing, like
normally,
black swimsuit?
First of all, there's 400 varieties of sharks. There's about 5 varieties that have bitten humans. And of that, the top ones we talk about here are the bull shark, the tiger shark, and the great white shark. And we don't have the other two in South Australia. The bull sharks are off the eastern coast, and the tigers are around the tropical areas. And they will sort of bite humans now and again, but they don't target us. Now, you can imagine a great white shark, his main food is dolphin and seal, other smaller sharks and fishes. Well, dolphins are still breathe air, and they're the same size as us. Well, why wouldn't they? I mean, they mustn't speak English. We told them time and time again, don't bite the humans. But they do. We will expect to have more. It's not a funny thing, really. We will expect to have more shark attacks, because their teeth are so big. They have no hands. They don't know what we are. They test bite can kill you.
But also, there's more people in the water.
Lots more people now, and I tell you what, with those new phones, everybody on those boats has got a phone, and everybody tells everybody where the sharks are and how big they are, and they take photographs of them and they put them on the TV, and so they're being sort of talked about lots more. Years ago, when I was doing my research, trying to find out why people were so fascinated, about sharks, I found out that the word shark was the most feared word in the English language. I read an article where they put lie detectors on people, and they said words to them, and like cancer and death and hell, mother-in-law and fear, all those crazy, fearful animals out there. And the word shark, really, it was surprising, got a higher reaction of tension or fear than any other word in the English language.
It's amazing. Rodney, you're so fascinating to talk about, particularly about this subject. Clearly you love the subject a great deal. The fact is you're still diving. It never put you off diving.
I'm a bit careful, of course. If I have heard that there's sharks in an area, I don't go in that area.
No.
I let them
I don't think I would be either.
No, I don't think I would either.
Thank you once again for coming and spending this time with us. It's just been wonderful once again. I love your vitality, and it's a great, Rodney's a great example of whatever happens to you in life, there's still a fascinating life to live. Thanks once again for being part of our time.
Well,
Rodney
thank you.
Fox.
Thank you, Rodney.
And we'll be back with some more special guests just after this.
Welcome back to Our Time. Thank you for joining us.
Once again.
Again.
Look, I've been really very keen to introduce our next guest for some time because she has a fascinating story to tell. Welcome, Vaani.
Hello, how are you going?
Welcome, Vaani.
Thank you.
Great to have you with us. Vaani, is it fair to say that you have had a sex change?
These days I think it's called gender reassignment.
Okay.
So, but sex change is fine.
Now, you started life obviously as the other sex. Did you know that this was where you were heading in life when you were a child?
No, I didn't, and it wasn't until I got a bit older and I had these weird feelings of not feeling quite complete or right. And it wasn't until much later in life when I was working actually in a gentleman's club and there was other people like me that I realised I wasn't the only one that felt like that. And so that's how I realised exactly what I was.
That must have been quite a relief then for you to feel like
Well,
you weren't alone.
Well, I didn't talk about it before because I thought that I was the only person that felt like that, and I thought I'd be locked in a rubber room or something. And then when I met people the same, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Liberating.
Very liberating.
But when you were at school and leading up to leaving school, you didn't really know what you were going to do in life either?
Absolutely not. And I wasn't very good at school. I'm not sure what it was, but I just wasn't good at school.
Well, you didn't come to Australia till you were 11.
11.
So was that
came
difficult?
over from England. Was all right. I sort of grew up, once I got here, grew up in Elizabeth, and that was a really hard time to grow up in the 60s. Terrible time to grow up in Elizabeth. It was rough. And so I just didn't have a good time at school. So as soon as I found a way out, which was I started working at the Royal Adelaide Hospital as an apprentice chef, actually. But before that, I'd worked part-time at John Martin's at Elizabeth, and my boss there was this gentleman called Brian Scott. And years later, while I was at the hospital, I bumped into him in a pub, and we chatted, and it turned out that he ran a gentleman's club and asked me if I'd like to go and work there serving drinks.
And that he changed your life?
Changed my life, and that's where I saw the people that were the same as me. And wasn't too long before I actually became one of the strippers. Was it one of those difficult things that you thought, was it a sudden, I'll go back a bit, was it a sudden realisation that I should move forward with this transition? Absolutely, it was like a ton of bricks fell on my head. It was...
And how long did it take before
bells
it
going
happened?
off in my head.
Yeah.
A couple of years.
And did you have to have counselling? What was the procedure?
We had to go to what was called a sex change board then, and the one I went to started off in Adelaide, but then I left Adelaide because in 1978 I actually left Adelaide and joined the touring show of Les Girls. And so I ended up in Melbourne, and that's where I started more of the sex change board in Melbourne. And you have to see psychologists and psychiatrists and talk to them, and it's about a 2-year procedure.
Is it the same now, or is it a lot quicker?
No, there's nothing like that really anymore, and it's very expensive. Back then it was just done on the click-clack, Medicare paid for it, and so it was free. Now it's thousands and thousands of dollars.
Is that right?
I believe it's about $22,000.
Good heavens, that surprises me. I would have thought something like that would have actually, from then, might have cost a lot of money, whereas now it wouldn't cost so much.
And it was still very experimental back then, and so I think I was about the sixth or seventh one in Australia, to have it done in Australia, and it was still very experimental.
But did you go into having these operations feeling, when I wake up, I'm going to be what I want to be? Is that how you felt, or?
I felt that I would be more comfortable living the life that I wanted to live.
Yeah.
I've got a different take on this. A lot of my friends feel that they were a woman trapped in a man's body.
Yep. Or it can be vice versa.
Or vice versa, of course. I don't feel that way. I think there's a third sex, which is transgender, and I don't think that having surgery made me into a female at all. And I don't think that I was ever a male. I think that I was transgender.
Well, you've always been a Vaani, haven't you?
I've always been a Vaani.
Yes. but that's the amazing thing. Now, just so people understand what you look like when you're working, when you're performing, we've got some shots of you just recently that are fascinating to see. You scrub up quite well with a few chook feathers.
Oh, right, for an old boiler. Actually, they were taken for Garage Bar when I worked there quite a few years ago. I'm no longer there. And that was only taken just in November when the winner of the 2014 Eurovision, Conchita Wurst, came to Australia.
Yes.
And I interviewed her for Feast Festival, and that was a show called Art of Drag with Conchita Wurst, but it was actually hosted by me.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it was great.
Well, it's good to see that you're
Gorgeous
as well
costumes.
respected as you are within the community as well. But you've had obviously input into other people who have come to you and said, I feel like this, have you?
Yeah, well, I just sort of try and point them into the right direction. There's a few doctors and psychiatrists. There's actually a gynaecologist here in Adelaide that I can send people to.
Dr. Rosie.
Dr. Rosie, who's amazing. And there's also Dr. Robert Lyons, who's at Flinders Medical Centre, and he's very, very good. And because I'm not an expert, I can only tell people or advise people what I went through, because what I went through may be not what right for them.
Yes.
A different direction. So rather than say, well, you should do this and you should do that, I think that's incorrect of me to say that. Rather send them to people that
are experts.
Yes.
The reality in life is, though, that as we're created as embryos, things don't always turn on and turn off.
That's
and
right.
I've just been watching a program, fascinating. It's amazing we ever make it, to be honest, to be anything. You know, the fact that our face is all in bits and comes together, it's just an extraordinary thing that our life, that humankind lives the way that we live.
Absolutely.
So from all of the other unusual things you've done, you've also had a bit of time in television doing some interesting things.
Yes, I was on Channel 31 with my good friends Rochelle and Fifi, and it was actually filmed at your studio. That was a lot of fun, and we did 13 episodes, and it was showed around Australia 14 times.
Yes, I know, and there's a best of available.
And a
as
best
well.
of available on DVD. And
The idea of that show, though, was to also give a general public a better understanding of what I find very confusing, all the GYB
Absolutely.
thing.
Well, it was a variety show, and we had all sorts of guests. We had all sorts of
But
guests.
the current terminology for gay and lesbian, bi...
Oh, no, it goes on
things,
forever, doesn't it?
It does.
It's almost every letter in the alphabet. But it's basically gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender,
and queer.
and...
No, they don't
Well,
use
Q's
that.
in there, and I don't like that.
find
I don't
that
like that.
offensive.
I haven't heard that for a very
I don't
long
like
time.
the word
No,
queer.
but it's within that.
It's in that.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
in
and
that.
I find that a bit offensive too, because people are people. You know, you've got red hair. Does that make you odd?
Yes, apparently.
You know, but people have big feet. Does that make them odd? You know?
No.
Human beings are human beings, and the diversity of humankind is so important for living an interesting lifestyle.
Absolutely.
But you were also on a blind date show. You were the date.
That was a film clip that I did in the 80s for Stephen Cummings and the Sports, and the song was called Another Kick in the Head. And as part of that, I was his girlfriend, and he went, and we'd split up, and he had to go on a blind date to try and win me back, but I chose someone else.
How much has somebody like Carlotta affected your life?
Carlotta, she was fantastic. I was living in Melbourne, and I was actually working in R-rated cinemas, of all things, performing as a stripper. And they'd show blue movies, and in between the shows they'd have strippers, and there was 5 or 6 of us that were transgender working there, as well as other naturally born females. And then I got this phone call, and I rang the number. I wasn't home, it was on my machine. I rang back, and it was actually Carlotta asking me to join the Sydney Lay Girls, where I worked for quite a few years, and that was wonderful. I've just finished touring Australia with Melbourne touring show of Lay Girls, so it was good to go into King's Cross, and I lived there for about 20 years.
Wow.
So when are you going to write the book?
The book's in process, actually. It's funny you should say that. So I'm a friend of mine who is a doctorate of English literature at Adelaide Uni, Dr. Rosalind Prosser. She's helping me write it because I'm not good with books.
Is it that? Or
I read one once.
Oh,
That's about it.
yes. I've been to the library.
That's it. And so she's helping me write it, and hopefully it will be out next year.
But you've now gone into what's loosely called, I suppose, semi-retirement?
I've left my job of 17 years. I was the manager of Crazy Horse Review in Hindley Street for 17 years. I've just retired. And I'm quite enjoying it. I'm still doing my cabaret stuff.
But the interesting thing is you're also caring for your mum, looking after your mum as she's
I'm
grown
part-time
up.
carer for her, and she is wonderful. She's a character all of her own, and she gets about quite well all by herself. She doesn't really need me to look after her.
How old is she though?
She's in her 80s now.
Yeah, so.
But working the late hours at Crazy Horse and then having to go and see her, it just...
There's mum.
Didn't work.
There she is, little bugger she is. She puts me in my place now and then. She reminds me that I'm not too big or too old to go over her lap.
Vaani, I hope you have you're also doing, though, weekend shows regularly, aren't you?
Yeah, every Sunday night I'm at the Edinburgh Castle Hotel in Curry Street.
That's here in South Australia.
Here in South Australia, where I have special guests each week, and it's just called Sunday Sessions with Vaani, or Vaani's Big Arvo. And we have DJs, and it's not just, it's for anyone. We get we get all sorts of people there. Great beer garden, great food, great staff, so it's good.
And a great coming together of a whole community as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Vaani, thank you for being so frank.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no,
It's been lovely to talk
lovely.
to you. And I've wanted to have you on the show for ages because quite often we just don't show the diversity of mankind enough, do we?
Or womankind.
Or womankind, exactly.
Personkind. Oh, heavens, what's politically correct anymore?
I know it's all a bit queer. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Vaani, thank you for joining us, and we'll be back with more Our Time in a moment.
Welcome back.
We're still here with Vaani.
We are.
And Vaani, I have one last question for you. Is there some advice you could give people who are young, or in fact parents or grandparents who have somebody who isn't fitting in and who isn't comfortable in their own skin? What advice would you give them? This is, I suppose, across the board, isn't it?
I think it is across the board, and I think it's very important you go and seek help. There are people out there just like you. Back in my younger days, I thought that there was nobody feeling the same way as I did, and it was very, very difficult. And I thought that if I dared speak about it, that I'd be locked away. I didn't know there was an illness or a sickness. It's very important to go and get some help. There are people to talk to. it's easy to find out that information.
Would it start with your GP? Would that be a good...
Start to your GP.
Yeah,
Have a
good
talk
place
to your
to start.
your doctor. Speak to your doctor.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the program
Thank
once
you for
again.
having me. Thank you.
Janice, it's been
Yes.
jam-packed.
I know.
Great people talking to Rodney about the sharks
Yes.
and Vaani about her life. What could be more in your time than our time?
Joking
Sorry.
now. Did you?
Okay.
No. Please
The
join
dust
us.
rise.
Yes, please join us again next
Yeah,
time.
next time
Thanks
on
for
our
your
time.
company.
Please keep yourself nice till then, and we'll see you next time.